I've had a chance to put the Peak Design Travel Tripod through a series of tests and use cases. There's no time to waste. Let's jump right into my full review of the tripod in carbon fiber edition. I'm going to break down this review just like I did in my blog post, so if you haven't read that yet, make sure you check out the call out right here. It only makes sense to do this review by comparing it to another tripod, and if you watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I use the Siryu T024X, which is also carbon fiber. It's been now replaced by a newer model, which is the T024SK, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same. Now let's look at the specs. Weight probably surprised me the most when comparing these two tripods. The Siryu comes in at 2 pounds versus the Peak Design Travel Tripod comes in at 2.81 pounds. That 0.81 difference is something that's actually quite noticeable where you're carrying both in your hands. Now that's the only advantage that Siryu has, although it is an important one that carries throughout the rest of the review. Now when we're looking at folded length, maximum height, minimum height, load capacity, and diameter, Peak Design wins all around. Now let's circle back to weight. I too was surprised that the Peak Design Travel Tripod is heavier than the Siryu, and I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of carbon fiber bits that are used or lack thereof. Peak Design decided to make the center column out of aluminum, and as well, the ball head is a lot chunkier and made out of aluminum as well. Now, I do think that the Siryu is a little bit anorexic, and oftentimes in tripods, lightweightness is a trade-off for stability, but we'll get into that in a little bit. In my last video, I showed you how to deploy the travel tripod, but I learned a couple tips and tricks along the way, so let me show you actually what is the fastest way to collapse and deploy the travel tripod. Here's how it works. First, drop the center column, bring all the legs together, and each one of these segments, you're going to unlock them. This you can't really save a whole lot of time on, but you got to do each one. Let gravity pull all of them down. You get this nice little pattern. Use your palms and actually bring it around, and you have it fully collapsed. Now the same thing actually works for deploy, I realized, and it looks like this. So open each one together at the same time. 3 times, this opens up. Let gravity pull all of them down, and then you can grab around and kind of lock them all together at once. The bottom ones are a little bit harder to do because the legs move around a bit more, but once you got the technique down, everything's good. Bring the center column up, and then you're done. Now, one thing I've really learned to appreciate is that cam locks are actually pretty awesome because you can do those singular motions, and as well, you can visually tell when a leg or section is locked or unlocked. With twist locks, you can't tell at all. The time saved with the Peak Design Travel Tripod is that you don't need to collapse all 3 legs to be able to put it away. With the travel tripod, all you have to do is close it up and you're almost good to go. You still have the center column to pull down. So to do that, all you do is unscrew the knob and drop the center. But there's a problem that is not so obvious. The way that this ball head is designed is that there are 3 different fins. If the fins aren't in perfect position, it's not going to go all the way down. So to fix this, you got to loosen the ball head, twist the ball head around so that the fins are in the right position, lock it in, and drop it down, close the legs, and then you're good to go. Now, when it comes to being low on the ground, I am super impressed with how low the Peak Design Tripod can get versus the Siryu. Now, unfortunately, you will need to use the hex key to make it work, but it comes with it, and once you figure it out, it's not so bad. Now, what I'm not convinced of is that this is something that you'll be doing quickly on the fly, but if you need a specific hero shot or a low to the ground shot, the option is available to you. Now, with the Siryu, it can actually go a little bit lower, but you need to bring a smaller carbon fiber tube, which I never have with me, so this is as low as it goes. Really impressed, but what about upside down? Well, yeah, it's possible. It's like the gymnastics of tripods. Well, I don't know if I'll ever get to use this mode. It's not something I really thought of, but it is nice that it is available and they thought of it. Now, you're probably wondering, can't the Siryu and other tripods do the same thing? This is just its upside down mode where you put it away, right? But you'll notice that there are no clicks in place, so it's not particularly stable and it does take some guesswork. This is designed for upside down mode. All you have to do is use the hex key, unfortunately, flip the center column around and you're good to go. And it works pretty well, it looks like. Now you know. The ball head has to be one of the most divisive features of the travel tripod. And I'm gonna cut to the chase. It's either gonna work for half of you and it's not gonna work for the other half. It really comes down to its panning ability or lack thereof. Peak Design set out to design a tripod ball head that's streamlined, it doesn't have any protruding knobs, and it's supposed to be easy to use. To that, I'll say they've done a pretty good job, but it's something you're gonna have to get used to. So here's how it works. First step is the mounting of the camera, and you'll notice that my camera already has an Arca compatible plate installed because I use Capture, but of course the tripod itself comes with its own plate, so you'll have a plate regardless. Now, like I said, the first step is to put the camera on, but first you need to understand that there are two control rings on this ball head. The top ring has a tab right here, and you can rotate it around, and you have another ring down below which controls the movement of the ball head. So let's focus on this top ring, and you'll notice that it has a lock icon right now. To unlock this tab, you need to rotate it counterclockwise to loosen this tab, or you'll see the unlock icon right here. I've learned that a better way to go is just remember the conventions righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, because in most cases, you're not gonna have these icons facing you, so you do need to remember or else you're gonna be really, really confused. So right now it's in unlock position. You're going to pull this tab down and you're gonna take the camera, jam it in on one end, make sure it's flush flat, and you're gonna release the tab and it's gonna lock it in place, okay? Now, I've noticed from personal experiences that this is pretty secure even if the top ring is unlocked, but to be safe, lock it so that there's no way of knocking this tab and for the camera to pop out. Now, the second operation you need to understand is the bottom ring. It has a completely different texture. It's a larger ring as well. So hold the camera, unlock the ring by turning it counterclockwise. This releases the camera to be able to move in all directions on the ball head. Clockwise to tighten. Now, immediately those that have issues with this ball head are gonna say, yes, this camera doesn't have any independent panning controls. Like I can pan this way manually, but there's no way to just control it in this plane. And there's no way to explain it. This is how Peak Design designed it, and there's no way around it, or is there? For those of you that are looking for independent pan control, whether you're a videographer or you're a photographer looking to do panoramic photos, there is a solution for you, and it comes in the form of this Peak Design universal head adapter. They created this specifically for this purpose so that you can pop in your favorite ball head. What this comes with is a special adapter. This is the main piece. It comes with hex key. You're not going to need this, especially because you can use the ones that come with your travel tripod, and a carry case, of course. So to install this, it's actually really easy. I'm going to show you right now. You're basically just going to loosen this. The ball head comes right off. You replace it with this adapter. You pop this in, you take the hex key, screw it on. Once you have that done, you take your ball head, screw that on. It's using a 3/8 inch screw, which is the same screw size for any tripod, and voila, you have independent pan control. So this is pretty much what you gotta do. There's no way around it. You gotta do what you gotta do, right? Okay, last thing I wanna talk about is being able to go vertical. Now, when I first looked at the Peak Design travel tripod, I thought, brilliant, the ball head is designed so that I could go vertical anywhere I want, anytime I want. But the reality is that it's actually not the case. And I wanna show you what I mean because it's not so obvious by looking at it. Remember earlier I talked about the 3 different fins that it has, and that's actually one of the limiting factors for how you can go vertical. Now, here's case study number 1. What if the camera was mounted this way with the lens going out that way? And you're gonna wanna go vertical either left or right. So let's try that. Going left, no problem. Going right, there's a problem. The fin touches the center column, which means you can't go any further. So that's it. That means in this mode where the tab is facing backwards, you can only go left. Now, what if I did it the other way around? What if the tab was facing away from you, the camera is pointing ahead, and I want to go vertical? If I want to go left, I can't. I can go right, no problem, okay? Now, what if you had another two weird scenarios? What if your camera is mounted this way, where the tab is to the right, your camera is facing outwards? I can kind of go vertical, but it's not actually perfectly level if you look very closely. If I turn to the right, again, one of the fins comes in the way where it's not perfectly horizontal level. All right, final case, what if the tab is facing left? And again, camera's facing outwards. I want to go vertical. Left, kind of, but again, it's not perfectly horizontal level. And if I want to go to the right, I can, but again, not perfectly level. So ultimately, you can only go perfectly level with the tab facing backwards or forwards. So that makes things kind of interesting. At the end of the day, what it means is that it is not as flexible as you might have thought, the ball head. It is slightly more flexible than your standard ball head because typically it only has that one notch, which means you can only turn it one way. But based on your preferences, you need to have in your mind how you mount your camera. So because I like to go vertical this way by turning this left, I know I need to mount the camera this way with the tab in the back, lens facing forward so that I can go vertical this way. Again, it is what it is. Good in some scenarios, not so great in others. All right, let's talk use cases. From a photography and videography perspective, I feel like we've touched on everything so far. Ultimately, it comes down to panning capability. If you need to go panning, this is not going to be the ball head for you. Now, you can use it with the universal head adapter, and if it works, great. But if you find that it's too janky for your workflow, then it's just not going to work for you. As kind of, for me, a standard photographer that needs this for, long exposure sunrises, sunsets, milky waterfalls and things like that, I feel like this is going to do a great job for you. You're just going to have to get used to using the ball head, getting used to some of the peculiarities and what I talked about just now about it going vertical in certain directions. Otherwise, once you get used to it, you're good to go. Now, one of the things I'm super impressed with though is the smartphone use case, which I didn't think would matter, but is actually something that I really needed in my life. And so, typical to Peak Design Over Engineering, they've built it in right here. So let me know if you can relate. When you're traveling, you're looking to take a selfie photo that doesn't look like a selfie, you're with a group or maybe with family and you want to take a photo, you start looking around for like a ledge or some object that you can lean up against, and it's never really perfect because it's not level, the phone topples over. Now we have a solution. If you have a tripod with you like this one and has a smartphone holder tucked in, you can actually leverage that and set it up anywhere you want. So here's how it works. It's really easy. The smartphone holder is tucked away in the center column, and all you have to do to pull it out is you take that hook here, you pull this down, twist, and it comes right off. A spring and magnet holds it in place so it comes out but it doesn't fall to the ground. You simply pull it away and you have your smartphone holder. Now this smartphone holder, you'll notice, has a longer end and a shorter end. The longer end is what is going to mount onto the ball head. It's spring loaded, primarily made out of plastic, but I think has some aluminum bits as well. So to put the smartphone holder on, it's really simple. It's just like mounting a camera. Just make sure you get it in place. We're going to put this on and make sure, what I've learned is that the flat end of the holder has to face you or has to face the unlock tab. Otherwise, it's not going to go in for some reason. So I feel like that's a bit of a flaw, but it's the way it works. You drop it in on one end, pull the tab down to loosen, and there you go. You got your phone here, so you're gonna mount it on like that. Take your photo. One thing you'll notice is that it is by default on a bit of an angle, okay? It's tilted upwards. So if you want it to tilt downwards and level, you just have to adjust your ball head. Really easy to do. and then you can take your photo. Once you're done, all you got to do is lift this up, take your phone off, and you unlock this, or it was already unlocked, I guess. Pull the tab, take this off, and then you have this on you, and now you just have to tuck it back into the center column. All you have to do is then put it in, the magnet's gonna catch it, that hook that you took off earlier. It used to be a lot harder, but the trick to put this back on is that simply push up, make sure you have the triangle aligned, push up and twist, and then it's in, and then you're good to go. As a selfie stick? Nah, I don't think so. Stability in a tripod is a weird thing because one, it's difficult to measure, and two, it's really hard to tell how much instability is manageable and what isn't. So I'm gonna do a quick eye test first of the legs, the center column, and the ball head to get us going. With both tripods extended, the first thing we'll look at are the legs. And so the first thing I noticed when playing around with it was that there was actually a considerable amount of flex in the legs. And I think it has to do with the 5 sections, each one contributing to some flex. But when you press it, there is some wiggle. Now, that's not to say that the Siryu doesn't have any wiggle at all. I think it's inherent in all tripod designs. There are less sections here, so perhaps that is one of the reasons why there is less flex. It does wiggle, but slightly less, so that's something to keep in mind. Now let's look at the center column. This is a problem that has plagued the Siryu ever since I owned it. I'm not sure if it's just my particular unit, but take a look. If I wiggle the center, there's actually considerable amount of movement in the center column. Now contrast that to the Peak Design travel tripod, and you'll notice that there's pretty much no flex or movement at all. Now in terms of ball heads, the Siryu comes with a pretty basic ball head, but you do have to be careful with it. One thing I've noticed is that if everything is tightened and you over twist it, the ball head comes right off. That gets kind of annoying. Now, if you're looking at the Peak Design travel tripod ball head, that doesn't become an issue. Let's say if it's locked, you're not gonna be able to twist it off, but you do have to be careful in terms of unlocking and locking it. When you're unlocking, you need to make sure you're counterclockwise, and now it's loosened, right? But when you're locking it back up, you have to remember it's clockwise, because if you counterclockwise, you change the position, clockwise turns it, but if you accidentally knock and hit something else, you're gonna change the position as well. So remember clockwise to lock and only touch that ring. So that's something you have to be careful with. Now in terms of stability, with both tripods extended and the perfect environment, stability really isn't an issue. But what if we introduced external factors to it, like wind? So what I decided to do was, what if I took a phone, let's say, to create vibrations at the bottom of the leg, download an app called Vibration Analysis to see how much of that vibration would register at the top of the ball head. So here's what I found. It looks like with vibration from the bottom of one leg traveling all the way up to the top of the ball head, we're measuring at about 0.001 G maximum average. That's what I saw through the app, G being the gravitational constant. It looks like with this particular test, both performed about the same. So what about wind? Well, I don't exactly have a wind tunnel to test with, but I do have a fan. So I'm going to put it on full blast to see how much vibration registers between these two tripods. With the wind test, things got interesting. With the Peak Design travel tripod and the fan blowing right up against it, I was measuring about 0.002 G at a maximum average. And for the Siryu, I was measuring 0.001 G. This means that the Peak Design travel tripod is actually more susceptible to vibrations through wind. For the final test, And perhaps the least scientific is something I wanted to try, which comes out of the flex that I saw on the legs. So what if I actually tapped the midsection of the legs? How much of that vibration would show up at the top of the ball head if I used the same amount of force? I'll try my best, but we'll see what the results look like. With the completely unscientific tapping test, what I measured was also equally as interesting. So with the Peak Design Travel Tripod, I measured 0.02 G maximum average versus the Siryu, which was 0.01 G. That means that tapping the legs physically results in greater vibration up to the ball head as opposed to the Siryu, which is quite interesting. Lastly, I'll touch on the load hook. You'll notice that the Peak Design hook is actually different from the hook of your traditional tripod. While subtle, there's some nuances that are worth noting. In a traditional tripod, the weight hook looks like this, and it's a pretty simple metal wide hook that you can put on anything that you want. It rotates in all directions and pretty wide straps can fit inside. I've never really had any issues with this hook. On the other hand, the Peak Design hook is designed differently, and here's what I mean. The main thing is that it can only point in one of three directions. This is one direction, another direction, and that's the third direction. This is because the center column is triangle in design, so it can only articulate in three ways. This is a con in my opinion because that means that if you want to try to get your bag in a certain orientation so it fits underneath, this could be a little bit tricky as opposed to the traditional design where it can rotate in any direction that you want. The other thing you'll notice about the hook is that it's very deep, which is great. So if you want to put in something that is rope based, or let's say a bag, like a grocery bag, it'll fit in very nicely. But the con is that the hook itself isn't particularly wide or forgiving, and so that means that large straps and other large objects might not fit in so well. So why don't I actually show you how Peak Design backpacks work with this hook so you know what I mean. What I learned is that with the center column down, it's almost impossible to place bags onto the center hook. You have to be about halfway up or halfway down rather, to be able to put a bag on. The other thing about the hook is that because it's quite deep, but not very wide, your straps will fit in about halfway in. Now, this may look a little scary, but from all my tests, it seemed pretty stable. It's not like the bag's gonna fall off, so I think you're fine. Now, ultimately, when it comes to stability, it's so hard to gauge and so hard to measure between these two. Each one has its pros and cons. Like for instance, this particular tripod, the Siryu, has serious center column instability issues. It wiggles around. It's been a problem I've faced ever since I've owned it. Now this one, the center column is super solid, but what you face is some peculiarities in just how it's built. The hook we've talked about, you have to live with certain qualities there. And really with the legs, you got the joints that seem to wiggle, vibrations that seem to carry up to the ball head a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the question you have to ask yourself is that in a real life scenario, are those things going to be things that will impact the photo quality of your picture? All I can offer up is this. I'm not sure. Without testing it extensively and having a scientific way of doing it, it's really hard to give you a definitive answer. But at least by showing you some of the tests, you can make your own decision about whether the Peak Design Travel Tripod in carbon fiber is stable or not. Hands down, the Peak Design warranty is much better. We're talking about lifetime warranty versus 6 years warranty. With Siryu, I'm a bit skeptical in terms of the warranty process as I've never gone through it. It is a Chinese company. They do have offices in the US, but I would imagine it being a little bit tricky to get any warranty work done with a tripod like this. With Peak Design, I mean, they're reliable, and I've actually done a warranty claim with them. And so, for instance, I had a stitching issue with one of my backpacks. I let them know, I sent them a photo, and they issued me a new backpack right away, and I got it within a matter of a couple weeks. So the lifetime warranty claim is super powerful here. On top of that, they built this tripod to be fully serviceable and all individual parts to be replaceable, which makes this a much easier product to clean, to maintain. And if you do need to replace a very specific part, all you have to do is send you a small part and you can do it yourself, or maybe they'll send you a new one. So again, warranty is not a problem, and Peak Design wins here. Price, of course, is going to be the real kicker here, and there's no way around it. This is more expensive. The Peak Design travel tripod in carbon fiber is almost $600 versus the Siryu. I originally bought it for $200. I think the new model is about $229, so almost a third of the cost of this. The main question you're gonna have to ask yourself is this actually 3 times the value of this in terms of feature set and usability, warranty, and all those different things? I'm gonna provide my take at the very end, so make sure you get to the end of the video. I've received a bunch of questions from other videos, and there are a couple of small features that I haven't been able to get to yet. Bubble level, while it's a nice touch, if you have your camera mounted in a certain way, most of the times it's actually gonna obscure the view of the bubble level, so not particularly helpful in most scenarios. Hex keys, whether you love it or hate it, they're here to stay with Peak Design products. What they've done is actually built in an actual holder for the hex keys on one of the legs. This is not a permanent holder. It can slide up and down. You can pop it out. You can move it to a different leg if you want to. I think the problem that I have with this holder is that while it does snap in place, it's not incredibly tight as it should be, because there have been tons of scenarios with me using it where I've accidentally knocked it on one side and it's fallen out. And this is the kind of thing where you don't really want to lose if this is the only pair of hex keys that you bring out while traveling. What I much prefer to do is actually put this hex key in the soft pouch that it comes with. I'll show you the secret compartment for it. Or just leave it in your backpack so you can have quick access to it later on. I will say that they have really made this hex key sexy, if I must say, compared to standard hex keys that are out there and other ones that they've produced in the past. This is a 2-in-1, so you got a larger one and a smaller one that you'll need for maintenance. It folds down into a small form factor, and the way that it goes 90 degrees gives you a lot of leverage when you need to spin it around and tighten things or loosen things. So really well designed. It has a loop as well if you want to use one of the anchors to go alongside one of your bags. But yeah, hex keys. Now, as far as the soft case, it's pretty much what you would expect from a Peak Design product. The fabric is really nice. I would say it's probably weatherproof, not waterproof. It's got nice dimple texture to it, which is different from any other product they've made in the past. It's got the nice stitching. The backside has the leather handle. You got the loops as well for anchor links. What more can I say? I mean, it's a case for the tripod. Now, one thing I did learn using this is that it is extremely tight. And another tip, make sure you have the ball head on the opposite end, so the non-zippered end, the bottom end. You really have to jam this thing in. So I've had trouble with this in the past, but just make sure you force it all the way. Once you got it in the right way, close the zipper, and then that's it. So what about sliders? Well, I own an Edelkrone Slider 1. It's a mini slider meant for travel and small projects and things like that. How you can use this, if you can't see, I've replaced the ball head with the universal head adapter. That exposes the 3/8 inch thread, which allows me to put the slider on. And then from there, I still need a ball head that will go on top. I can't use the Peak Design ball head because it's so custom, but a regular ball head with the camera on top, I can then use the slider. So it's one of those things where, yes, it's possible, but it does take quite a bit of work to get going. So I wouldn't recommend this for travel usage. This is definitely something you would use at home and probably with just another tripod that does a better job at this. But what about other cameras like this one here, the Instax or the tripod mount? Both of them use a 1/4 inch screw hole. And so this is the exact same screw size that the plate uses. So what you need to do is take a similar ARCA compatible plate, screw it onto the camera, and then mount it on as you would any other camera. Now, one of the disadvantages here is that unlike some other traditional tripods, some tripods actually come with a reversible screw, one that's 3/8 inch and one that's 1/4 inch. So you can take the ball head off, flip the screw, and then screw a camera like this right on, which the Sirui did have as a feature, but unfortunately this doesn't have it, so the only way to do it is by using a plate. Other things you can integrate with the tripod are, it works with anchor links and straps, so both the soft case and the tripod has loops so you can put your anchor links through and then connect your strap on like this. And off you go. And the travel tripod works with the line of Peak Design backpacks, as I'm going to show you. It works best when storing it on the side pockets, which I'll show you. And a tip I learned is that make sure the ball head is facing down to protect it. So let's start off with the 45-liter travel backpack. Fits in really easily because there's a lot of space and a lot of wiggle as well. So you're going to want to use external carry that comes with it. It's really simple. You got the loops. You're going to lock it in place, tighten, and it's going to stay in place, unlock, and bring it out, and you're good to go. With the 30-liter everyday backpack, works the same as well. Again, incredibly spacious. It's going to go in, a lot of wiggle in there, so you're definitely going to want to use external carry. For the 20-liter everyday backpack, V1, I'm going to put this in. This is probably very similar to the newer versions as well. There is some wiggle, so use external carry. You'll also notice that the length of the tripod is flush with the height of the backpack, so it's not gonna look too awkward. And finally, the latest 15-liter everyday zip backpack. I was surprised, but it's gonna take some force to kind of jam it in, but there is enough space for the tripod to fit inside if you're gonna do like a day trip. The height of the backpack is flush with the length of the tripod, so that's perfect. There is slight wiggle in there, so again, you're going to want to use external carry. Now, one question that fans have been asking about is, what about putting it inside backpacks? So I thought I'd give you a mix of a couple of different backpacks that I own to see if that matches your use case. So this one is a Mountain Hardwear 50-liter backpack, and yes, you can easily, for a top-down or any other sort of opening backpack, all you do is just put it inside, like measure the length of your backpack, the height, and it should fit in no problem. So right now it's snug right inside. Put clothes kind of around it to make sure it's nice and secure. For the everyday backpack in 30 liters, it isn't a problem at all. So I have the side open. All you have to do is just make sure the dividers are folded up or down. Put your tripod in, and there's a ton of space. Close this up, and you're good to go. For the everyday backpack in 20 liters, it's the same. I showed you that the height or the length of the tripod is roughly the same as the height of the backpack. And so again, you make sure your dividers are set properly. You put your tripod in, close it up, and you're also good. Finally, we have the 45-liter travel backpack by Peak Design. And of course, this is gonna fit. This is a really large backpack. It really depends on the things that you have, the configuration inside the backpack. Right now, I have a medium camera cube inside. Of course, it's not gonna work, but you can see from the length of the tripod that it's gonna have no problems fitting inside. And finally, we've had some questions about the smartphone holder. For some of you, you guys might have really large phones. You guys might have large cases and thick cases like the OtterBox. So one thing I wanted to do was just measure what is the maximum height from top to bottom in landscape mode for a phone for it to fit in like this. And so I measured it out. It's 9 centimeters or 3 3/4 inches. So if you're within those limits, you'll be okay. So the ultimate question is the Peak Design travel tripod in carbon fiber worth it? Well, I got 3 things for you. 1, if you're strapped for cash and looking for something on the budget, this probably isn't it. You're probably better off looking at the Siriu, which is much more affordable. 2, if you're looking for the most lightweight tripod, this also isn't it, unfortunately. There are lighter tripods out there, like the Siriu, which I showed you earlier. And finally, number 3, if you're looking for the latest and greatest, you are invested in the Peak Design ecosystem and don't need panning, but want just a really solid tripod overall, I'd probably pick the Peak Design travel tripod in carbon fiber. Wow, that was a lot to go through. Hopefully I was able to answer all your questions about the Peak Design travel tripod in carbon fiber. If I didn't and you have other questions or comments, make sure you drop them down below. And if you really loved this video and found it helpful, I'd love to subscribe, hit that bell and like, and I'll see you guys next time on Going Awesome Places.